Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Real Talk. I hope you're all doing well, keeping safe. And if you're new to the channel, this is a platform for open minded individuals to come together, to share ideas, share experiences, so that we can learn from each other, educate each other, and, just develop ourselves and the society as a whole. So if you're new to the channel, please click that subscribe button, click the like button so we can reach out to more people and and grow this channel as much as we can. And for our subscribers, welcome back. And it's my great pleasure in introducing two new guests today and Triv to the channel. Danny, welcome. Finally, you've managed to come on after a lot of convincing. He is, for those of you who don't know, he is our editor, but he's making his debut. So Danny, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Good to have you on. And another debutant on the channel, Chris, bro, all the way from South Africa. How are you doing?
Good, thanks, and yourself. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
It's great to have you guys on board. So let's get cracking. And Triv, there's no need for your introduction.
Yeah,
You've
I was
been
just, I was just
on
gonna
here
say.
many times. No, bro, welcome back. Good to have you back on. This is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah.
We normally talk about like specific topics that directly impact humans, emotionally, internally. This is something of an external factor that also has an emotional impact, but we're going to look at both sides of the coin. And we've mentioned it briefly. Everyone is talking about it. It is the elephant in the room, or should I say the virus in the room. We're going to talk about COVID today. Like, just basically, we all coming from different regions. We live in different regions, so it's great to get. We live in different continents. All four of us are in different continents, which is great. So we get a perspective of a global perspective of this pandemic and how it's affected our countries and our jurisdictions. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to start with Triv because he is from China. He lives in China. He's not from there. He lives in China. um, um, that's where it all started from, as Mr. Trump would call it, the Chinese virus.
Chinese virus.
The China virus. China virus.
Or aka the clown, whatever you want to call him. So Triv, it started off in China, spread over the world. How is the situation right now in China, and how has the government and basically the government handled the whole COVID situation there? In your opinion?
Yeah, sure. Before I start, I'd just like to apologize to our listeners for Rail's elephant virus in the room joke. It was absolutely terrible. Okay, so
I have to make it a bit light-hearted. I know we talk about serious things, but let's make it a little bit chilled.
Yeah, you probably
Okay.
made more people sad with that joke than COVID has. But anyway, look, right now in China. So I say this every time I speak about China. And I think it's important that people realize this. It goes for any country. I'm speaking about an area that I live in. I live in Guangzhou. It is the southernmost city in China. Oh, well, Guangdong is the southernmost province in China, and I live in Guangzhou, which is a city in Guangdong. So I'm speaking about that particular province. I'm not in Beijing. I'm not in Shanghai. So I know that at this point in time, the numbers are spiking in the more northern regions of China. At the moment in Guangzhou, we're approaching Chinese New Year, which is a really, really big time of the year for Chinese people, and usually it involves them going back home to their hometowns, so the more rural areas around the big cities. The Chinese government, or the Guangzhou government, has issued a request to citizens, to expats, to please not go on holiday during this Chinese New Year. They've asked people to remain at home, to remain in the province, to be safe, to stop the spread. They've also re-implemented lockdown measures to a certain extent. So they did lax it in terms of they weren't checking temperatures when you entered malls anymore. The school that I work at weren't checking students' temperatures as soon as they walk into the building for the last 3 months or so. They've reverted to all of that. So China's basically in preparation for Chinese New Year, they've re-implemented all of that and they're back on high alert, despite the fact that Guangzhou is minimum risk at the moment, is low level risk. There's not a lot of cases at all, if I'm not mistaken, or one or two. They've basically gone back into full lockdown mode without being locked down. As far as the Chinese government and how I think they've handled it, that's exactly how I think they've handled it. They've been they've not been reactionary like other governments, where they've waited for things to go poorly before they've done things. When they've noticed that something is about to go wrong, they act then and there instead of waiting for the shit to hit the fan before making decisions. And I know for various reasons it's easier for them to do so. But yeah, that's my take on it. I think they've been really good. Mm-hmm. It's strict, it's harsh at times, and I think if you live in the West and you're really particular about your freedom, I hate that word, but people want everything to be free. I have the right to run around and spread the virus. I have the right to breathe air, all of that crappy nonsense. This is not the place for you. But in terms of me being safe, yeah, pretty much.
That's good. You mentioned something about the West, so it segues really nicely. I'll come on to the West. So Danny, you're in Toronto, Canada. Not as bad as the US, but how are things looking in Canada at the moment, and how have they been, and how has the government basically handled this whole situation?
It's been quite up and down here. I was just looking at the figures earlier this morning, and it looks like it is on the decline. The last report that I've seen is from Jan 29th, which is it says 5,000 cases. This has gone down from 9,400 on Jan 3rd. So it does look like it's on the decline, which is a good thing. However, looking at the graph, it looks like it varies a lot. It depends on the weekend, it depends on what people feel on a particular day, and if they feel like going out, numbers increase shortly after. I think the government has done okay, not very well. The Canadian government, I will say, and this is my personal opinion, having lived here for about 2.5 years, more than 2.5 years, it is very slow. And like Triv said, contrary to the Chinese government, they are reactionary in the sense that, in fact, more so than other countries, they will wait for things to escalate and then take an action. And by then, things have gotten a lot worse. So whether it comes to vaccinations, when it comes to lockdowns, when it comes to doing tests, processes in Canada take very, very, very long. Processes are amazing. They're good. You need a process for everything so that things go correctly, and you need to be organized. But there's one thing to be organized, and there's another thing to spend a bit too much time on trying to get organized in a world where things have to be done rapidly currently, because the vaccine does not wait for anyone. So you have to be, as a government, you need to be quicker at reacting. So I will say, looking at the numbers, it's not as bad. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it doesn't get any worse. So yeah, that's
interesting. Living in the West, I would expect that from. We all grew up and lived and born in Africa, so I would expect that from African countries. Speaking of, Chris, how are things in the south of Africa?
Honestly, I think they could be a hell of a lot worse. Obviously, the numbers and the stats that you read, whether they are true or not, that I can't tell you. But last year, government actually, the first lockdown that we went into, I think it was good, although it came a little bit late. they were consequent with it, and it was as good as could be in South Africa. But since then, they've went from being proactionary to reactionary, and it's, yeah, as Danny said, the vaccine waits for no one, and we are lagging behind in that aspect very much. And yeah, look, as I said, the numbers I would have expected at this point in time to be much worse. But on a light-hearted note, I think the main mistake we made was sending Triff to China, because they obviously took offense and retaliated with this pandemic. So, but no,
Yeah, that's a
Touche.
good one.
Well played. Yeah, fair enough. No,
overall, South Africa could have done better, but it wasn't as bad as could have also been expected, knowing the South African government.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge fund of
Is
500
the
billion
alcohol
rand.
ban still there? Whoops, something just.
The alcohol ban is still there, and that is actually one thing that seems to be working, because on New Year's Eve, I saw a picture of one of the emergency wards at one of the bigger hospitals, and for the first time ever, it was the trauma unit, and there was no patients in there, because there was no drunk driving. So the alcohol ban, I don't know how much it's helping the COVID, but it's definitely helping other areas of the country as well. So
Yeah. Well, they do need help because hospitals in most countries are
Yeah.
packed with patients. I think it's a really good thing that they've done. I in my opinion, to help at least the health services out. So now we've spoken about Africa, Europe. Canada, China. Coming to Europe, honestly, in my opinion, I think it's been a bit disappointing. I live in Luxembourg, but most of the rules and regulations come from the European Union, the EU. So all the European countries have to abide by those regulations. And I think as a whole, if you compare it to the other European countries, I think Luxembourg's done okay. The numbers are still quite high. I mean, it's in like 200s and hundreds, and this is a small country, remember, with a population of around 650K. That's nothing. I think the downtown in Toronto or in Guangzhou has that many people. So in terms
Way
of
more.
exactly,
Yeah.
so
I think my
if you look at
apartment block is more people.
the percentage of infections and deaths, I think that I would say it's quite high. The good thing about Luxembourg is we have voluntary free testing. So I've done a few, and luckily it's been all negative so far. So every few weeks you receive a letter, you can go do a free test. That's a good thing, and that's manageable because of the small population. There's curfews, there's restrictions on how many people are allowed out or at in each other's homes and all of that, which is obviously in many parts of the world. The only problem I have is and this is more to do with the EU, they've been very slow in rolling out the vaccines. So because they've taken their sweet time, so they have to first pass the EU regulation before they get into each individual countries in Europe. So because the EU has slowed down, every country in Europe is suffering because of that, because we haven't got the vaccines. The order was put late, and now they're arriving pretty slowly. Although in Luxembourg, I was doing some research this morning, you can apply for a vaccine. I'm not sure how long it's going to take for you to get the vaccine. So that's the situation in Luxembourg. The numbers are still relatively high compared to the population. They're lower than they were at the end of last year, where there were thousands in a day, which is quite ridiculous given, like I just mentioned, the population's so small. So having 1,000 cases a day, it's scary. But that has significantly dropped because they had to close down the restaurants and bars and everything. So so it is better, but it's not, could have been much better. Like Danny said, they did take the same with Canada. It took a bit of a while for them to react to things. But it is kind of manageable at this point in time. So we've all shared our, like what's happened in our countries and our areas. But now just like, because at the Real Talk, we want to also dive into how people are coping with it. Like, how, obviously you can't speak for the whole country, but generally what have you seen in your opinion? So I'll go back to Triv. Like, how has the general population reacted to the measures, reacted to the laws and regulations that have come in, and generally, like in terms of mental health, with people you speak to, how have they been doing so far? Because I know we're taking a little bit of a light-hearted look on COVID, but it is a serious situation. There are people who've lost loved ones, and our condolences to those people. But on the real talk, we like keeping it a bit light because we don't want to be too serious about everything. Otherwise, you're going to be depressed. So we want to keep it a little bit on the light side, but it is a serious situation. We completely get that. So Trev, how have people generally reacted to what's been going on in China?
Brother, the system of government here and the way that the country's worked has meant that the negative impact on mental health here hasn't been. It's nowhere near what it's been like. Speaking to my friends, what it's like back home, lads. Anyone listening to this, China is open. Guangzhou is open. I'm back at work. The movie theaters are open. The gyms are open. Public transport is open. Restaurants are open. Clubs are open. Bars are open.
So it's almost like normal.
It's completely normal. Like I said to you guys earlier, the only thing that's sort of gone a bit backwards is that they've re-implemented the sort of precautionary measures in terms of you have to check your temperature before you enter a specific venue and stuff like that. But because of the way the Chinese government acted, when the virus was found, they made masks mandatory. They handed them out if you didn't have them. They locked everything down. Yeah. They locked everything down basically overnight. If there was an area where a virus was found, a virus case was found, they tested everyone for free in that district. They call it they refer to them here. And because of that, right now, so everybody went into lockdown for that period of 3 months, I think it was. Everything was shut down. The entire country came to a standstill. Well, the whole of Guangzhou came to a standstill. And that was tough. I'm sure that was tough. It was tough for me being stuck in my apartment. We started teaching online, blah, blah, blah. Our businesses took a hit. And since June, things have reopened. It's now been 7 months and everything is open and people are able to earn a living again. People are able to do everything they want to do. So I think China is doing well. I think mental health wise, people are doing okay because they're able to. Because
everything is open, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's good. At least it's not that bad on that part of the world, and people have resumed normality, or at least most part of it. Danny, coming to you. I'm sure it's not the same in Canada. So what's been going on there? How have people reacted? I know you told me about protests and stuff. So if you can just elaborate on that, which is ridiculous.
Definitely. Living on this side of the world, like Trev mentioned, the whole freedom aspect takes a big part in it. So everyone has this idea, which is fine, which is great, that you should have your freedom. However, there are certain things that you need to look at and what context you're looking for freedom. I mean, to me, freedom means being able to go out and being able to resume a normal life. But how does that happen? You need to listen to the government. You need to listen to professionals that we are in a pandemic. So you need to follow that. For you to be able to resume normal life and get your freedom back, you need to make sure that everyone is safe. And once that is done, then you can go out and do whatever you want once the pandemic is over. But some people over here have not taken it too well. There are some people who are completely against the fact that there is a pandemic. I recently haven't heard or seen any protests, maybe because I don't go out much. To be honest, the furthest I go is a 3-minute walk to the grocery store, which is down the street, maybe once a week or once in 2 weeks, and that is it. So I do not see anything outside. But there are people. Yes.
What is Canada like now? So you mentioned, sorry to interrupt you, but you mentioned that you don't go out much. Are you allowed to be out? Is there no sort of high level lockdown or anything like
So we are in lockdown. Sorry, I actually should have mentioned that we are in lockdown. The way Canada operates is very provincial. So the federal government will say something or will give advice, and then it's up to the province. So, for example, Quebec was in full lockdown and curfew. I'm not sure. I haven't recently read anything, so I don't know if that's actually changed. But they were in curfew. They implemented curfew. While in Ontario, which is one of the biggest provinces and the most populated provinces, there is no curfew. And just down the street, a couple of weeks ago, I'd say a couple of months ago now, time has just flown by. There were people 2 minutes away from me on the street screaming that the government is controlling their lives. There's no pandemic. You should remove your masks. They were hooting. They were running around. So yeah, it's
So Canada
two
isn't
sides of
as
the coin.
nice as they say it is.
No, no, not at all.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's similar to the US. It's the marketing of the country that is well done. So I
Yeah.
mean, look at the US. They were in shambles a couple of days ago when all of this Capitol Hill stuff happened. Anyway, but that's besides the point. So yeah, it's people have not. Some people have acted very well, like the company that I work for. I mean, people do not go out at all. Like they just respect the rules and they're smart enough to realize that there's a pandemic going on and you should, for our safety. But like I mentioned, the problem is every province does it differently. So, and there's no restrictions on flying or traveling from one province to the other. So when numbers in one province goes down, um, people from those other provinces start traveling and vice versa, and it keeps happening. So the numbers keep fluctuating because if the federal government does not go out and say that everyone needs to follow these rules, it will never get better. So we are basically relying on vaccines for this to get better, for the numbers to go down,
Yeah.
which I guess most countries are relying on the vaccine, but
Mm-hmm.
to reduce the number, it's not going to happen because it just and international travel is still allowed.
Wow.
Just recently, I read that the federal government has imposed a 3-day, I think it is, mandatory quarantine in hotels, 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That does not make any sense.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's all over the place. People's going back to people's mental health, it's affecting people. Being in lockdown for almost a year now is it's difficult. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why even people who are following rules or have followed rules in the past are starting to take it a little lightly. They're starting to go out. I understand that, yeah, it affects you. You need to be out, you need to get some fresh air. But you still, again, you need to realize that there is a pandemic. The more you go out, it takes only once to catch a virus. The virus will not be like, okay, you know what? You haven't been out in 6 months. I will give you a pass this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So
Good
it
point.
takes
Good
only
point.
once. And yeah, that's the state.
No, very, very
Canada.
interesting. Like the contradicting situations in China and Canada. But let's and Triv. Not Triv. Sorry, Chris. How
Oh,
about
please,
South?
please.
I know.
Yeah, please.
My bad. My bad. I take that back, Chris. How are things going in South Africa? How have people reacted? I know in the beginning it was quite a few videos flying around about people making fun of COVID, but how are things now?
Look, we are still in lockdown, and so there is restrictions and curfew. But overall, people are. I've not seen people making a fuss about having to wear masks and talking about their freedom. So I've not seen side of it. When I do have to go to the shop and I see people, everyone is wearing their mask. People are keeping their distance. So the people are trying to do their bit. Look, I'm not all over the place, so I can
course,
just
that's
tell
what
you
it
what
is, yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
But I think overall, they've, yeah, it's. I've not seen any protests or anything of that. People just yes, they might be annoyed about having to wear a mask, but they're not going to the extent of wanting to protest and all of that. So
I'm sorry, Chris. I laughed because I lived in South Africa and a country that protested for everything.
Yeah,
it's ironic.
So nice
Yeah.
to see that a country like that
Yeah.
is not going through protests while a first world country
I'm
is doing that.
sorry.
Yeah.
But
I'm
Danny,
sorry
that's
to burst
because
your-
for once it's not people trying to blame each other. We're all fighting the same.
The same
Um,
thing. Yeah.
Gents, I'm sorry to burst bubbles here, but this morning they were on the beaches in Cape Town protesting the closure of the beaches without masks, running around. They got upset that one of the guys got upset because the police officer took his shirt and his flip flops, and then started fighting with the police officer. Then the police officer gave his flip flops back. So they're protesting because the beaches are closed. Chris, I don't know if you missed that, bro, but they're 100% protesting their freedoms.
Well, this is one of the first few times they've actually made a fuss like this, from what I've seen.
Yeah, well,
Let me put it this way: it's nowhere close to what America is like, where they're having marches and everything. Yeah, there might be 12 people on a beach screaming for wanting to take off their shirts and slops, 100%. But I think that's just, you get stupid people everywhere. But it's not
That's true.
the masses who are demanding government to change legislation or anything like that. It's not gotten to that extreme yet.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's good to hear. Like Danny mentioned, we all lived in South Africa. We know how much they love protesting. Coming back to Luxembourg, people have taken it pretty well, I would say. Obviously, like Chris said, there are a few idiots out there in every country. So a few weeks or months ago, someone had a massive party with 60 people. Again, that's a lot for Luxembourg. 60 people you won't even find in one street, leave alone a
It's
house.
half the population.
Yeah, exactly. And they got caught, they all got fined. But the problem with the fines is Luxembourg is a very rich country. People can afford to pay fines. And the fines were high, but not that high, like you can pay it off and then you're fine, you're good to go. So there are a few idiots who've done stupid things, and when they opened the bars and restaurants, people were flooding there with masks, but flooding there, and like then they'll be on the streets drinking because we are allowed, not anymore, but we were allowed to drink like right outside the restaurant or a bar. It's common. So when you're outside having a drink, everyone's masks are off, and that's when the virus, the infection rate started spiking, and now they've closed everything down, so it's gone back down. The thing is, people haven't acted or behaved really badly. They've been within the government regulations. Of course, there are a few people who they haven't followed it, and then they've paid fines. But generally, people wear masks. I mean, if you don't, you have to pay a fine. So, and in terms of mental health, the big thing about Europe is that in Luxembourg, the borders are open. A lot of expats live in Luxembourg. 40 to 50% of the population is foreign, or the working force, I would say, is foreign. That means they all want to go home, meet their families over Christmas and New Year's, which some of them did, quite a few of them did. And obviously, when a few months ago they opened the borders, and a lot of people went traveling, including myself. I'm not saying I'm a saint here. We went traveling because we were all locked down for so many months, and we thought, okay, it looks like we're getting over the virus. And then infection rates went up because they opened the borders and everyone was going on holiday. Now this time around, during second lockdown, we could still travel, but this time I learned my lesson and I didn't go anywhere and I stayed put. But I had friends who went traveling, and that's the issue. It's not wrong. Then they need to understand that yes, you might pick up the virus somewhere else and bring it back, but they are acting that you are allowed to travel. So they're not doing anything wrong if you look at completely from a legal point of view. From a moral point of view, it's a completely different discussion. So yeah, I think people have been generally very civilized and have been obeying the laws and regulations. But the whole problem is because the borders are still kind of open, you can still go in and out of the country. That's where the problem is. A lot of the viruses or the infections, and they can't close the borders because A lot of people live in Belgium, Germany, France. A lot of health care workers live there. If you close borders, they can't come into the country. And how are they going to provide or help people out? So it's a very tough situation. And I do feel a bit of sympathy for the government when I see from that point of view. But otherwise, I would say mental health, yes, there will be people who have had issues. Even I've had days where I've been a little bit down because of the whole lockdown. But it's something we can talk about and discuss, and you have friends and family who you can speak to, so you kind of get over it, or you kind of manage it in a way. Yeah. So guys, we're running out of time now.
I just want to add one quick thing,
sure.
And a very important thing in Canada. That's why I just want to add that quickly. Just back to your previous question, how people are handling it. I don't 100% blame people for reacting the way they are in Canada, because we have government officials that have gone out on holiday during lockdown, during Christmas. I think the Ontario finance minister resigned. He was one of them out of, I think there are about, I may be wrong, don't quote me on the number, but there are about 20 government officials that have resigned because they did not follow rules. They were flying to the Caribbean, going for holiday, pre-recording Christmas videos from their home or putting backgrounds, pretending like they're at home. Yes, that's happening. That's a thing. So how do you expect the public to respect your rules when you can't yourself? I take my dog out for a walk every day. I have to. I've seen police officers on the street not wearing their masks. How do you respect authority when authority cannot follow their own rules? So that's just one point that I want
to. And Raheel, I'd also like to add one thing
before
guys.
Before we cut. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I've taken away from being in China is how important having a well-run government is. Look, I know that there's criticism of the Chinese government and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theories of things, but one of the big factors that has made the country today, or this province today, be allowed to be open and running as per normal is that we never had things like a 10 p.m. curfew where the virus is miraculously going to allow you to be outside until 10 p.m. and then be like, oh, 10:01, now I can get you. Because the government during the... And I know why countries have done that, because these private businesses, they needed to stay afloat. They needed that money to be able to continue running. The Chinese government subsidized companies during that time. They dropped the tax percentages to allow these smaller companies to be able to survive the lockdown. These are the sorts of things people keep running around, and I keep seeing on social media, how have China done this? How have they come out of this so quickly? Like it's some conspiracy theory, like they manufactured the virus and then spread it across the world, blah, 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 blah. There was a lot of hard work and smart decision making made in this country. And a lot of people, because of this term democracy, I don't want to get too much into it, but it's very hard for people to see through that. And the Chinese government have run a very well laid out plan during this time, and that's why this country is in the situation that it is right now. It's not because of any conspiracy theory.
No, that's a great point, and let me just quickly round up. And see, the thing is, with these things, you have to rely on your government and your leaders. So how well you do is dependent on how well they're doing or how well the government is doing. So thanks, guys. I hope people out there, viewers out there, have got some form of idea of how things are working in different parts of the world. They're completely different depending on how your government has tried to tackle the situation. It's not easy, we understand that. But like Tiv mentioned, you have to be smart about it. You have to be proactive about it rather than being reactionary. So thanks, gents, for coming on. Great debuts for Chris and Danny. Well done, guys.
Thanks.
Hope to see you on again.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Danny, you'll be editing, so you'll be there. So, but yeah, we'll love to have you guys on again. And for the viewers out there, thank you so much for staying tuned. I hope you've learned a little bit something. And if you have something to add, please get in touch with us, comment, send us an email. All our information is in the description. If you want to come on the show, give us a shot. You're more than welcome to come on and have your say and share your experience, not just with coronavirus, with anything else that you would like to talk about. So thank you, everyone. Please take care. Follow your government guidelines. They do help. We look out for each other. And yes, the mental health is a very big aspect of it. So take care of that too. Till next time, we will see you all very soon. Have a great, great day.